The tannery closed and left 800 hides behind. She built the last American leather co. They called it a mess. She called it an inventory. 800 hides, left on the floor of a dead tannery in a county that had already decided leather was someone else's problem now. The foreman said the cleanup alone would cost more than the hides were worth. The bank agreed. The county extension agent put it in writing. She backed her grandfather's truck up to the loading dock on a Tuesday morning in March 1997, and nobody stopped her, because nobody thought there was anything left to stop. Nora Callahan is 23 years old. Her forearms are roped from a winter of cold work. Her dark hair, black-brown, almost black in low light, is braided past her left shoulder, a few wisps loose at the temples from the drive out. She's wearing a faded olive-green canvas jacket, jeans worn pale at both knees, and a pair of work boots that have stood in enough creek beds to have lost all pretense of shape at the toe. Clipped to the right breast pocket of the jacket is a brass-handled folding knife, her grandfather Seamus's, the kind made in Sheffield in 1961 that has a thumb slide worn smooth as soap from 36 years of the same hand opening it the same way every morning. Freckles run across the bridge of her nose, dark copper, standing out from the cold. What she just inherited: 160 acres of failing pasture land outside Ridgeline, Pennsylvania, a tax bill that had grown past the point of embarrassment, and 3 composition books filled with her grandfather's cramped, slanted handwriting. Pressed so hard into the page, you can read the impressions from the other side. What she knows: that Seamus Callahan spent 40 years building the finest hand-stitched leather harness operation in the Tri-County region, and that nobody cared, except the Amish, the carriage restorers, and a handful of New England saddle clubs who found him through word of mouth. What the world thinks: that she is a 23-year-old girl with a dead grandfather's hobby and a lot of romantic notions about a trade that moved overseas in 1985 and isn't coming back. The tannery is called Harwick Brothers. Was called Harwick Brothers. The sign is still on the brick wall above the loading dock. Cream lettering on green, chipped, the brothers faded past reading. The building is 6 stories of industrial brick on the west edge of Callum, Pennsylvania. Closed 14 weeks ago, when the Harwicks took a deal from an import distribution company and walked out the same afternoon they signed. They left behind 3 tanning drums, 2 setting machines, a staking line that hasn't been oiled in a decade, and 800 vegetable tanned hides in various stages of completion, stacked, tagged, and paid for by customers who stopped answering the phone when the Harwick lawyers stopped picking up. The county called it abandoned asset liability. The bank called it a write-down. The import company called it someone else's cleanup. Nora Callahan calls it a starting position. The man who shows up at the dock at 7:30 that morning is named Gerald Fitch. He works for the Harwick estate attorneys. He arrives in a black Lexus that is immediately fouled by the gravel lot, steps out in black Oxford shoes that he seems to notice too late, and approaches the dock in a charcoal gray suit jacket with a maroon tie knotted too high. He is carrying an aluminum clipboard pressed flat against his chest. He has rimless rectangular glasses with thin metal arms, sandy hair combed straight back, a chin lifted at a degree that suggests he has never once arrived anywhere to be told no. He rocks heel to toe on the gravel. He has the patient little smile of a man who has already written her off and feels comfortable enough in that assessment to be polite about it. He looks at her boots, then the braid, then the jacket. His eyes do the pricing. It takes about 2 seconds. "You're the Callahan girl," he says, not unkindly. "Your grandfather had the harness operation up the valley." Nora says nothing. "Sweetheart," he says, "I understand the sentiment. I do, but these hides aren't what you're thinking they are. We've had 2 tannery buyers through here, both passed. You'd need a processing facility, a distribution contact, a line of credit that, given your situation, I don't think you're positioned for. He adjusts his clipboard. Your grandfather, God rest him, he was a craftsman. Craftsmen don't build the kind of infrastructure this would take. He left you the passion, which is lovely, but passion doesn't move 800 vegetable-tanned hides in a down market. I'd be doing you a disservice if I let you cart these out of here without telling you that plainly. Nora looks at him. Write up a release, she says. He waits. There isn't anything after that. He writes something on his clipboard. He looks at his shoes once, briefly, and then leaves. Have you ever looked at something the entire world told you was worthless and realized, in your gut, that the world was wrong? That night she sits at the kitchen table in the farmhouse with a single bulb above the sink and the first of Seamus's composition books open in front of her. The cover is green. The spiral is bent, and the pages have gone soft at the corners from being handled and rehandled. His handwriting is cramped, left leaning, pressed hard. The ink is blue in some places, pencil in others, the pencil darker where he was sure of something. Near the front of the first book, underlined twice and circled once, the hide remembers everything done to it. So does the man who finishes it. She reads that 3 times. Then she puts her boots back on and walks out to the barn. Here is what Seamus Callahan knew that Gerald Fitch did not, and what Nora has understood since she was 14 years old watching her grandfather work the bench on Saturday mornings. Vegetable tanned leather is not a commodity. It is a process. It is the difference between a hide that lasts 80 years and a piece of chrome-tanned material that begins to die the day it leaves the drum. Here is the thing about leather that nobody in the industry bothered to tell you when chrome tanning took over in the 1950s. 2 processes exist. Chrome tanning, chromium sulfate salts, 24 to 48 hours, fast, scalable, cheap. Produces the supple, soft leather in 95% of what you buy today. It will stretch and mold and feel luxurious for 10 or 15 years. Then, it breaks down from the inside out. The chromium changes structure under oeuvre and body chemistry. Chrome-tanned leather does not age. It decays. Vegetable tanning uses tannins derived from tree bark, oak, chestnut, quebracho, in a process that runs 30 to 60 days through a series of pits at slowly increasing concentration. The tannin molecules bind chemically to the collagen fibers of the hide and create a leather that stiffens and then softens with use, that darkens where your hand touches it, that develops a patina over decades the way silverware develops a patina. A properly finished vegetable tanned belt, given basic care, outlasts the person who buys it by 20 years. A saddle made from it can last 100. The numbers that govern everything. Tannin concentration between 2 and 12 balm, rising not more than 1 balm per week to allow deep penetration without surface hardening. pH between 3.5 and 4.5 throughout the process. Temperature held below 80 F. Above that, the collagen begins to denature before the tannin fully penetrates. 1 degree over 80 F for more than 4 hours at the critical early stage, and you get what tanners call case hardening, a surface that looks finished but has a core that will crack in 2 years. Seamus had written it this way: slow is not a disadvantage. Slow is the product. What Nora has, 800 hides in various stages of completion. About 200 of them are finished, pulled from the final pits, set, dried, ready for staking and finishing. Another 350 are mid-process. The remaining 250 are in the earliest pit stages and will need a full 40-day completion cycle. What she has no access to, the Harwick tanning pits. The building is in probate. What she has? 160 acres, a creek that runs constant across the south pasture. Seamus's journals, all three of them, and the fact that Seamus Callahan built his own primitive pit system in the East Field before Harwick Brothers ever gave him a wholesale contract. She goes out there in the gray of that first morning, frost on the grass, and finds the pits under 12 years of overgrowth. 3 concrete basins, 4 feet deep, 8 feet across, fed by a diverted channel from the creek. Capped with plywood gone soft and green. She pulls the plywood back and looks down into the darkened cold of them for a long time. By the 3rd day, she has them cleaned. By the 7th, she has them lined and sealed. By day 14, with $1,200 borrowed from a machinery dealer in Altoona who had known Seamus and had strong opinions about what the man's granddaughter was or wasn't capable of, she has the first 40 hides in the initial pit at Second Balm. The failure comes on day 9 of the first cycle. She has been watching the temperature since dawn. The spring has been warm, warmer than the forecast said. She checks the thermometer at 7 a.m., 74 F. She checks it at noon, 78 F. By 2 p.m., she is occupied at the far end of the property with a fence line that has gone down in the night and 3 of her grandfather's remaining cows who have found their way to the neighbor's hay bales, and she is back at the pits by 4 p.m. The thermometer reads 83 F. She stands very still. She reaches into the pit and lifts one of the hides by the corner. It comes up stiff at the surface in a way that is different from the normal firmness of early-stage tanning. She runs her thumb across it, and the surface gives correctly, but she knows before she even checks the second one. She lifts 8 hides. 7 of them have begun to case harden. She stands there with the 7th hide across her forearms, water streaming down to her wrists, and the weight of it, not the physical weight, but the weight of 7 hides that represent nearly $3,000 in acquisition cost and 14 days of work, settles across her shoulders like a crossbeam. She lost it. Just like that. 4 hours and 7 hides are garbage. She lays them on the grass. She goes inside and opens the journal. Seamus had written, "If the temperature climbs past the window and you catch it early, before the 2nd day, split the pit. Cooler water from the head of the channel will drop 6 degrees in an hour. Then shade the entire basin. The hide in the crisis is not necessarily lost. The hide you think is fine but isn't. That's what kills you." She goes back out. She digs a channel from the creek head to the pit in 3 hours, using a folding shovel from the barn. She sets canvas over the basin frame she built the week before. She drops the temperature to 75 F by dark. Then she goes back to the 7 hides she'd set on the grass and runs her thumb across each one again in the fading light. 3 of them are still viable. The top layer has hardened, but not fully penetrated. She resubmerges all 7. 5 days later, she pulls them and makes her assessment. 3 are usable. 4 are lost. 4 hides gone. She writes the number in the margin of the journal next to Seamus's temperature note. Then, she adjusts the channel inflow on all 3 pits and builds a permanent shade structure using salvaged corrugated tin from the barn roof. The problem does not occur again. Have you ever fixed something and known before you tested it that you'd fixed it? The 200 finished hides are where the first money comes from. She has them staked, conditioned with neatsfoot oil, and sorted by weight and grade in the old tool shed, which she has cleared and laid with cedar boards. She photographs each hide flat on a white sheet and posts them to a hand-coded web page that she builds in 2 evenings using a library book and a borrowed desktop computer at the county library in Callum. The page is not beautiful. The photographs are taken in natural light through the open barn door. The copy says, "Vegetable tanned harness leather, Full grain, finished at Callahan Leather, Ridgeline, PA. Tanned slow. No chrome. Ships flat or rolled. She lists the hides at $180 per full side. This is 3 times what the import distributors are listing chrome tanned product for. She expects to explain herself at length to every buyer. The first order comes on a Thursday at 11:15 in the morning. By Friday morning, there are 4 more. By Sunday, she has sold 27 hides, and the email account she set up through the library is producing inquiries from a saddler in Vermont, a bootmaker in Texas, and a man in Tennessee who says he has been searching for this exact product for 7 years and would like to speak to her on the phone. She is in the East Field moving fence stakes when she finds out. She comes back to the shed to check on the drying hides and sees the page on the screen she left open. She stands there, looking at it. Then, she goes back to the fence stakes. Gerald Fitch calls the farmhouse phone 2 weeks later. He has heard from the Harwick estate. He says he thought she should know that the estate has received an inquiry from a leather goods company out of Philadelphia, and they may be revisiting the status of the remaining facility assets. He says this gently, as if doing her a favor. He says if she had any interest in a partnership arrangement, someone with capital, someone with distribution contacts, he might be able to make an introduction. Those hides aren't for sale, Nora says. He waits. There isn't anything more. I see, he says. Well, you know where to reach me. She hangs up. Have you ever sat alone with a piece of paper that would end all your trouble and start the rest of your life as somebody smaller? By June, the mid-process hides begin to finish. She now has all 3 pits running at staggered intervals, a full cycle starting every 2 weeks, which means she will have finished leather coming out of the system every 14 days indefinitely. The 250 hides in the early stages will be the last of the Harwick stock. After that, she will need to source raw hides herself. The cash from the first 200 sides covers the tax bill. Twice over. She does not tell anyone. She sits at the kitchen table at 11 p.m. that June with the bank statement on one side and the offer letter from Gerald Fitch's Philadelphia contact on the other. A formal offer. $68,000 for her full remaining inventory and a consulting arrangement. Real money. The kind of money that solves the farm problem for 3 years. She holds the pen over the signature line. The bulb over the sink buzzes slightly. Outside, rain begins on the tin overhang of the porch. She sits there for a long time, freckles standing out across the bridge of her nose from the cold she came in from. Then, she gets up. She walks to the barn. She puts her hand on the staking horse Seamus built from red oak in 1974. Still solid, still set at the right angle for a person of her height. Because he built it for her, not for himself, adjusted the height when she was 16 and never changed it back. She picks up the first journal. She reads. The hide remembers everything done to it. So does the man who finishes it. She goes back inside. She puts the pen down. She goes to bed. In the morning, she is at the pits before first light. That's how it starts. Not with a speech. With a woman going back to work in the cold. The neighbor who comes first is Walt Dreher. He has the farm to the east. He is also at the feed store in Callum in September 1997, said in the presence of 4 other men that Seamus Callahan's granddaughter was going to lose that farm inside of 18 months, and that sentiment had never run a tannery. He comes to the fence line in October, not to the door, to the fence line, standing with a chipped white enamel coffee mug in both hands, arms folded as much as they can be folded with the mug in the way. He watches her work for a while. Then he says, "What grade are you selling the harness weight at?" She tells him. He's quiet. Then, "You taking raw hides?" "Bring them by Thursday," she says. "I'll look at them." He nods once, walks back to his property. That is the entire conversation. That is also the entire apology. Men like Walt Dreher don't say sorry. They ask a question with their hat brim down. The second person who matters is a woman named Ruth Engel, who runs the harness and saddle repair shop in Millbrook, 40 minutes northwest. She has been driving past the Callahan farm for 3 years without stopping. In November, she pulls in, parks, and walks to the shed door without knocking. She stands in the doorway with her arms crossed and her eyes moving across the stacked hides for a full 30 seconds. Then she picks up a finished side, runs her thumbnail along the grain, bends the corner, and holds it up to the light from the open door. "Neat's foot or tallow finish," she says. "Neat's foot," Nora says. "Tallow on request." Ruth Engel sets the hide down. She opens her coat, takes out a checkbook, and writes a check for $2,400 on the spot. 12 sides. She does not say anything about quality or price or the general marvel of what she is looking at. She buys the product. That is the whole review. That is more than enough. By the following spring, Callahan Leather is processing 180 hides per month out of the 3-pit system, with 2 additional pits under construction, using materials sourced from a salvage operation in Ohio. She has hired Walt Dreher's son on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and a woman from Millbrook who turns out to have done 3 years at a tannery in Leeds and arrives with opinions about finishing chemistry that Nora finds useful. The waiting list for finished harness leather is 11 weeks. The waiting list for custom-cut saddle pieces is 22 weeks. Gerald Fitch makes one more appearance. It is March of 1999. He drives up the lane in a different car, a silver one this time, and he is not carrying the clipboard. He stands at the barn door and explains that he is now working in a personal capacity and that he has a client, a lifestyle goods brand in New York, who is looking to acquire a source of American-made vegetable tanned leather and would like to discuss a preferred supplier arrangement. Nora is oiling a staking horse when he says this. She doesn't look up. "Send the request in writing," she says. He waits. She keeps working. He leaves. He is not beaten. He is not humiliated. He is just standing in a lane holding a business card that no one reached out to take. Somewhere between the parking area and the road, something shifts in the way he carries the clipboard. If he had one, he doesn't anymore. He never quite figures out what he missed. He eventually moves to commercial real estate in Harrisburg, and by all accounts does fine. Have you ever watched someone receive an inheritance that isn't money? 22 years pass the way water carves limestone. Slow, invisible, absolute. The East Field has 6 pits now, covered in a permanent structure of rough-hewn timber and corrugated steel. The shed has become a building. The building has become a compound of 3 structures connected by a covered passage that Ruth Engel's son designed pro bono, because he's an architect now, and he remembers when his mother came home and set a check on the kitchen table and said, "I found a tanner." There are 8 full-time employees. Annual production is just over 4,000 sides. The waiting list for harness leather, saddle leather, boot leather, belt blanks, custom bridle work runs between 4 and 9 months depending on grade. The leather that comes out of this operation has been used in bridles that have competed at the highest level of the sport, in boots that have walked the floors of the world's serious cobblers, in knife sheaths, and restoration work on 19th century carriage collections. It has been written about in the trade press 3 times, and in one magazine article that referred to Nora Callahan as the woman who refused to let American leather die, which she found embarrassing, and which she did not frame and hang on any wall. Nora Callahan is 45 now. The braid is silver at the temples, threaded through with it, not fighting it. The freckles have deepened and settled. The olive canvas jacket is a third replacement in the same style. She ordered them from the same workwear company in Ohio every time one wore through. The brass knife is still clipped to the right breast pocket. The thumb slides smooth as a river stone. She is checking a finished side against the grading standard she wrote out by hand and posted to the wall of the finishing shed in 1998 when a truck pulls up the lane with mud still in the wheel wells. The young woman who gets out is 24. Dark hair in a practical knot at the back of her neck. Jeans worn pale at both knees. She stops at the fence line and looks at the pit structure for a moment. The way you look at something you've been trying to picture from a description and now need to reconcile with the real thing. "Miss Callahan?" She calls. "Come through," Nora says without looking up. The young woman's name is Petra. She is from a farm in Virginia, Derry originally, and she has spent 2 years writing letters to every traditional tannery she could find in the United States, of which there are now fewer than she can count on her hands, and has received 3 replies, of which this was one. Her questions are good. The first one: how do you know when the tannin concentration has actually penetrated and you're not just reading the surface? Is the exact question Nora asked Seamus when she was 16, standing at his bench on a Saturday morning, and which he answered by taking her hand and pressing her thumb against the cross-section of a split hide and letting her feel the answer. Nora shows her the pits. She walks her through the stagger system. She shows her the temperature log she has kept, every day, both readings, for 22 years, in a series of bound notebooks that sit in a row on the shelf of the small office she built off the south wall of the finishing shed. She shows her the grading standard. She shows her the customer file, which is a physical file, alphabetical, in a cabinet from 1962. Then she reaches up to her right breast pocket. She unclips the brass knife. She turns it over in her palm, the Sheffield steel, the worn brass bolster, the thumb slide that Seamus opened in the same place for 36 years before her. She holds it out to Petra. Petra looks at it. Then at Nora. "Take it," Nora says. Petra takes it, holds it, closes her fingers around it. Nora goes to the shelf and takes down the first composition book. Green cover, bent spiral, pages gone soft at the corners as cloth. She sets it on top of the temperature log she's pulling for Petra's reference. Then she touches the cover once, briefly, the way you touch something you are giving away and want to finish giving away cleanly. "The hide remembers everything done to it," Nora says. "So does the man who finishes it, or the woman." Then she walks out to the south pasture to check the hedgerow, hands loose at her sides. She doesn't look back. Look around your own operation sometime, your own barn, your own back pasture, your own grandfather's tool shed that you haven't opened since the estate was settled. Someone near you is paying a disposal company to take away the exact thing that someone else will spend years searching for. Somewhere in a county not far from yours, a building has closed and left something behind that the lawyers have already written off, and the bank has already discounted, and the man with the clipboard is already priced at removal cost. Go look at it before someone else does.